If you enjoy what you hear here today, please consider supporting me on my Patreon page. Every dollar helps, and you get to see content that you won't see here. Chapter 14 Big Brother. The Crystal Palace was directly in front of them, looming over the group as the spire shot high into the bright blue sky. Queen Twilight had been heading towards the palace with Captain Scorpion and Spike, although both Broadsword and Vladimir had used the power of flight to catch up partway there. The walk to the palace had been simple, a straight, if long journey directly down the side of the gigantic crystal road leading from the spire. The walk itself was uneventful, with the group engaging in idle chatter to pass the time, and only having to deal with the odd glance of awe from passing crystal ponies. On their arrival to the palace, they could see plenty of guard patrols around the artifact in the center, keeping an eternal watch on the vital magical object. The crystal heart itself sat on its pedestal, spinning gently in the day's soft breeze. Just getting close to the palace, and both Twilight and Scorpion could feel the immense power radiating from the crystal heart, the abundance of the most pure love energy seeming warm and inviting to the changelings. It wasn't hard to imagine that any changeling lacking in will would be compelled to latch onto the artifact and never let go. Hence the guards, of course. It was the source of their trade deal with the Crystal Empire, where the majority of their supply came from, with only a small percentage coming from the passive love collected by their drones. With a trade deal like that, there wasn't too much of a need for love collectors, even if Twilight saw it prudent to not let the profession die, lest something ever happened to the Crystal Heart or the trade agreement. Still, no changeling from the Equestrian Hive could complain or dispute the purity of the love from the Crystal Heart, particularly the sisters Saronis and Palula, whose lives had once been saved by the love of the Crystal Heart many years prior. However enticing the Crystal Heart was, the Queen could not keep her attention on it, as a single guard approached the group and gave a respectful bow. "Your Majesty, you were expected," the guard stated. "I was sent to find and direct you."
I take it that it was too early in the morning for my brother to come out of the palace,
Twilight noted mirthfully.
"Where is he?"
"His Highness, along with Princess Miyamori Cadenza and Princess Flurryheart, are located in the dining hall where breakfast has been prepared." Twilight nodded.
"Thank you. I know the way."
Twilight led her group past the Crystal Heart and into the palace itself, ascending up a staircase embedded within one of the four large legs holding the giant tower up. After a quick ascent, they emerged into the main hall with various doors and passages leading further into the tower. If there was one thing you could criticize about the Crystal Palace, it was the fact that, due to its towering design, there were a lot of stairs to traverse. Not much of a problem if you were a Pegasus, but most of the crystal ponies were actually Earth ponies, with unicorns and Pegasi being far less numerous than in other parts of Equestria. Despite all this, Twilight was more than familiar with her adoptive siblings' home, and knew the quickest and most efficient way to get there. Before long, they were arriving at the guarded set of large, ornate double doors leading into the dining hall. The two guards outside glanced at the arrivals momentarily before identifying them, both giving a low bow as they permitted them access. One does not simply stop the prince's little sister, who also happens to be a changeling queen, from entering the dining hall. The queen's lavender magic threw the doors open for the group, revealing the large, decorated crystal dining hall within. Two alicorns and a unicorn were sitting together at one end of the vast table, a variety of food items set out that was obviously meant for more than just the three. Pancakes, cereal, and juice aplenty awaited the group, but food was not on the queen's mind as she laid her reptilian eyes on the group.
"Guess whose favorite aunt is here?"
Twilight cheerfully proclaimed, with a playfully outstretched hoof as she approached the family.
"Aunt Twilight!"
Flurryheart exclaimed excitedly, moving to jump from her seat over to the changeling. The alicorn stopped, however, when she realized that she was still holding a bunch of pancake in her magic, and she glanced back and forth between it and her aunt a few times. In the end, she simply shrugged, downed the pancake in a single bite, and then bolted off to where her aunt was standing expectantly. The alicorn went to latch onto her aunt, but was stopped in her tracks by a levitation spell, being gently deposited just in front of the queen.
Wait, Flurryheart, have you forgotten?
Twilight asked teasingly. Flurry seemed confused for a moment, but then realization struck her like lightning, causing the filly to nod ecstatically.
Sunshine, sunshine, ladybugs awake, clap your hooves and do a little shake.
The two chanted while going through the motions of their special hoof shake, breaking down into giggles by the end.
I remember when we used to do that.
Cadence spoke up from the table, a look of reminiscence on her muzzle.
We still do it!
Twilight shot back, holding tightly onto the filly that was now threatening to crush her chitin with her hugging powers. Powers that were backed up by an alicorn's version of Earth Pony magic. Come on, kiddo, let's not strangle Aunt Twilight. Shining joked as he approached and pried his daughter off of his sister's body. I never knew chitin could turn purple from asphyxiation.
Oh, quiet.
Twilight said as she playfully whacked him on the nose.
Whether you like to admit it or not, I'm stronger than you are.
Shining Armor chuckled. Is that a challenge? Oi, say hello before letting sibling rivalry kick in, please. Vladimir stated, making his and the others' presence known. Ah, Vladimir, broadsword. Shining Armor greeted his friends. You're doing well, I take it? As well as we can be, Broadsword responded.
Don't forget Spike and good Captain Scorpion,
Cadence added in, who too had now left breakfast and joined the group.
It's a pleasure to see you all.
Likewise, Your Highness. Scorpion bowed his head respectfully.
Please, it's Cadence. You should know this by now. I do not like friends calling me by title. It's a problem I'm working on,
Twilight jabbed.
He forgets to call me just Twilight, too.
Well, Twilight, the captain said with an amused smirk. How many years did it take a certain changeling queen to stop calling a certain alicorn of the sun princess? He does have a point, Shining Armor stated in agreement.
No pony asked you,
Twilight shot back.
She was my mentor. My reasons were totally legitimate.
Not just that you're a little awkward then, Shining Armor asked innocently. That earned him another bonk on the nose, and this one was harder. From their initial greeting, the group had all gotten back to the topic of breakfast, digging into the feast heartily. It was a nice reprieve for the visitors to the palace, considering what their next actions would entail. Still, it wasn't long before Cadence was telling Flurryheart the story about the time when Twilight, who had been visiting the Crystal Empire shortly before Flurry's birth, had been so tired from staying up studying all night that she had fallen asleep in her breakfast. And when she had been awoken, the then princess had loudly exclaimed the words, "I'm Pancake!" much to the amusement of her family. Back in the modern day, the queen was protesting against the telling of the story, while Flurryheart simply giggled in delight. While Spike and Scorpion both listened in, Shining Armor turned to the other two equestrians with a serious look on his face. "You're sure it's not necessary for me to come?" he asked. "It would take no time for me to get my equipment. I'd be ready before you leave." "It's fine, Shining," Broadsword assured the prince. "We'll keep her safe. Besides, you're needed here." "He's right," Vladimir agreed. "We can take care of her, or she'll end up taking care of us. She is a changeling queen after all." "She's also my little sister," Shining reminded them. "I'm not comfortable letting her go into this without me." "I don't doubt your commitment. You waded into a wasteland to find her after the wedding," Broadsword stated. "But remember that Vladimir was also there in the Badlands right alongside you. And then I was there during the Battle of Ponyville with both of you, too. We know what we're doing." "Besides, she isn't so little anymore," Vladimir joked. "She's as tall as Princess Celestia." "But things can go wrong," Shining argued. "Remember Longshot?" Vladimir sighed, shifting in his seat at the uncomfortable memory. "Did you have to bring that up?" "Sorry," the prince said regretfully. "I shouldn't have said anything." "It's fine," Vladimir said quickly. Point is, though, you worry too much. You sound like my wife, Shining grumbled. Because it's true. Scorpion butted his way into the conversation. Shining, Broadsword, and Vladimir turned to see that all the others had stopped talking, having heard their little conversation after all. Shining rubbed the back of his head. Ah, you heard all that?
Yes, Shiny,
Twilight said with a sigh.
And you do worry too much. I promise, I'll be fine. Saving Equestria is basically my job.
When you have your friends with you, Shining pointed out, why didn't you bring them?
Applejack, Rainbow Rarity, Fluttershy, and Pinkie all have their own lives,
Twilight stated.
I know they're there if I need them, but at this point, I don't know if I do.
I can send a quick letter if we do, Spike stated. Those 5 are always ready to go if the call comes.
Besides, if I drag Rarity from her project in Manhattan, I'll never hear the end of it.
Twilight stated with a chuckle. Now that is true, Spike laughed. You'd get a very passive-aggressive conversation about it. A couch and ice cream might also be involved. I feel like we're getting a little sidetracked. Scorpion butted in again, though amusement was clear in his voice.
Alright, listen,
Twilight began again.
The point is that I have a whole lot of guards with me, and I'm not a pushover myself. I appreciate the concern, Shining Armor, but I'll be fine.
The stallion in question puffed out a sigh of defeat. All right, fine. But if you die, I'll kill you myself. Twilight simply rolled her eyes in response, muttering,
Promises, BBBFF.
From then on, the rest of the morning went off without a hitch. Breakfast was eaten, and lighter conversation was had. Tragically, however, before they knew it, the hours had gone by them, and the time came. Duty was calling once more. The enchantments around the 3 vehicles initialized fully as the rotors began to spin, the pilots readying to disembark from the Crystal Empire. It's a shame we couldn't stay any longer, Scorpion stated, opening the door to their own transport's cabin. It's nice seeing you happy.
Hey, when am I not happy?
Twilight asked with a frown. I always like seeing the mare under the Changeling Queen, he replied. It's always nice to know that I serve a person, and not a complete maniac, like a certain other Changeling Queen I used to follow. Nope, she's only a partial maniac, Spike added in, hopping into the helicopter, usually when tardiness is involved.
Oh, you're never gonna let me forget that, are you?
Twilight groaned.
We were all young once.
And where did that time go? Scorpion lamented. Twilight hummed in agreement, a brief wave of nostalgia washing over her. She looked towards the other 2 helicopters, seeing Broadsword and Vladimir load up into their respective vehicle with their squads. Twilight swore she saw a brief shimmer through the air, move on past her, but examining the area showed that there was nothing. The Queen simply shook her head and stepped up into the cabin itself. All of her changelings followed closely behind, all of them in better spirits for their brief stop at the Crystal Empire. Still, they now had to do their jobs as their queen commanded. The 3 vehicles had their doors closed, and once the area had been vacated, they lifted into the air and began to move away from the Crystal Empire. It wasn't long before the edge of the barrier began rushing towards them, the perilous blizzard outside being all that was to greet them beyond. As they departed, Princess Cadence and her daughter watched on from the palace's central balcony. Floriaheart kept on waving until the 3 helicopters were out of sight, and she was sure her aunt was gone. However, Princess Cadence couldn't help but find it odd that her husband hadn't joined them on the balcony to see his little sister off. Queen Twilight and her entourage quickly left the Crystal Empire behind them, continuing up north to where Queen Draco's hive awaited.
Here we go,
Twilight muttered.
No going back now.
Well, that's good to hear. Shining Armor stated as he shimmered into existence, the invisibility spell he had been using having worn off. No chance of dropping me off again, then? All eyes turned towards the new voice, and the new silence that dominated the cabin was most deafening. It was so silent that you could hear every single time one of the occupants blinked, seeing if their eyes were deceiving them. As it was, there was no such deception to be found. "You've got to be kidding me," Scorpion muttered to himself as both he and all the others in the cabin gave the prince a gobsmacked look of amazement. "You're all actually surprised?" Shining asked, missing the growing, murderous look in his sister's eyes. "A simple invisibility spell, and a temporary one. Funnily enough, it was Twilight who taught it to me. Right, Twily?" It was then Shining Armor shrinking back as he noticed that the Changeling Queen was standing threateningly over him, her eye twitching ever so slightly.
Shining Armor!